Welcome back. I don't know why Kev is making that face, but I'm Paul John Dykes, and tonight Kevin and I are going to be giving you another installation of Screamacelica. Kev, tell us
Installation.
another
Installation.
installation. Yes,
I like installation better than installment.
an
Installation
installation.
sounds far, far better.
It's like you meet people now, and you know the last time you saw them, they probably didn't have much hair on the head, and you know that there's been an installation. It's the same kind of thing. It's another big slab in the story of Oasis. Kevin, tell me the concept of Screamacelica.
The concept of Screamacelica is this. We look at an album from a certain year and we look at what Celtic were up to during that certain year. And we might actually talk about other things that happened during that certain year. And we might talk about things that didn't happen during that year, just depending where the conversation goes.
It can go anywhere. And we also talk about what Kevin Graham and I were up to at that time. This was before, of course, Kev, you and I even knew each other.
Yes.
About 10 years before we knew each other.
It would have been, yes, but I'm going to fire
12.
you a question. You often say that you went to see Alfie at King Tut's.
I did, yeah.
What year was that?
You want me to do it through memory, or will I actually check? Because it was on the back of a single. What was that single with it got heavy rotation on MTV. Was it Dem Bones? It wasn't Dem Bones. That was something completely different. Something to do with Bones. What was the single they had?
Aye, I think I can, because
I'm going to have to check that.
You can check that as well, because I know for a fact I was at that gig as well.
Oh, were you? Who were you with?
I was with my pal who got thrown out for smoking a fag.
Was this post cigarette ban? Is it?
Yes. Aye.
Wow. Right. Let's have a look here. Right. It was definitely on that album. If You Happy With You Need Do Nothing, because I never really quite got what that meant. And that was 2001 on Twisted Nerve. There you go.
It would have been then, aye.
The single was You Make No Bones.
Mm-hmm.
You Make No Bones. So it was 2001. So we were in the same room, Kev.
In the same room.
We just didn't know it. Were we not also in the same room when the Beta Band played at the garage?
Yes, we were as well.
And that is a perfect and seamless gateway and segue into that T-shirt that you're wearing. Where did you get that?
King Tut's on Saturday night, where I met quite a few of the Axom heads who were nice.
The Axomniacs.
I'm calling them Axom heads because these guys ken their music because they went to see Steve Mason.
Of course.
And there's one of them that was talking to me who used to know the manager of the Beta Band as well. And he says that he loves this show, and I'm sure he'll be catching up later on the night. And it was good. It was absolutely amazing. Steve Mason, for me, is one of the lost geniuses of Scotland. So the Beta Band. And I was saying that to my cousin. I was with my cousin Gary, and I was like, no, remember the last time we saw him, there was less than 100 people there, and he sold out King Tut's on Saturday night, 300 and odd folk, and it was a great Saturday night in Glasgow. A brilliant Saturday night in Glasgow. The guy's just a genius. The boy is just like, he can't put a foot wrong. I mean, his new album.
People. I've not got his new one. That's the only album I don't have.
I'll just tell you, it's brilliant. But when you hear it, you know for a fact it's him. You didn't need to. If I can say it, you didn't need to listen to a new Steve Mason album and know it's a Steve Mason album. If you know what I mean, it's just got that. It's just got
very
that
distinctive.
Aye. The guys are ends, and I shook hands with a fella when I bought this T-shirt because he was doing the merch.
Who?
Steve Mason.
He was doing his own merch. Just shows you.
He was doing his own merch. He was signing the LPs, and he was doing there and having a blather and getting selfies took with folk in that as well. I never got a selfie because
he had a very nice jersey on. It was black and white hoops, and it was kind of mohair. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got my sources, Kev. But yeah, he's up there for me. He's one of the geniuses who's probably not had the level of mainstream success. But if you're into him and you find somebody who's into him, you just know they do have a specific taste in music. And I think that Steve Mason, Jason Pearce, Edgar Summertime, Mick Head, Anton Newcombe, these types of people who might not sell a million records are absolute geniuses. So go and check them all out.
I like guys like that. I like guys that just do it for the sake of doing art. Like, you look at Marky Smith as well, we can chuck Marky Smith into that category. It's easy to see why Noel Gallagher's got a solo career. It's easy to see why Liam Gallagher's got a solo career. But why are these guys at 50-odd, 60-year-olds still doing it? Because they love it. They're not doing it to make money. They're doing it because they absolutely love it, and they still believe they've got something to offer. And that's...
You're right. You're spot on. I mean, McGee said a thing about Liam Gallagher, that if the music thing didn't work out for him, he was actually worried about him because there's no other place on the planet where he fits in. And then you look at somebody like Steve Mason. What else is Steve Mason going to do? He's not going to go down and work at Tesco. He's just not going to do it. He can't. He's an artist. He needs to craft his art, you know? And by the way, no disrespect to anybody that works at Tesco's. Just an example that I used. Right. We're going to go back in your DeLorean, Kev, because that's what you used to do. You're on the Diet Brew. So is that the Diet Brew? Or is it full fat? Sugar-free. Here we go. We're going back to the 30th of May, 2005. At this point, we need to take a look back at what we've done so far. Definitely Maybe was released in 1994 and changed everything for guys like you and me, Kev. So talk us through the LPs and the journey that we've been on this series of Screamacelica, which, by the way, kind of like bleeds into an event that we do have coming up very, very soon to celebrate 30 years since they were discovered. Yes, they were discovered, Kev, at King Tut's Wawa Hut. 30 years ago, there's the gig there. 30 years of Oasis. I've got to say that's the coolest posters that we've done so far, Kev. Don't know if you agree with that. That Man City Blue. Terry Christian, the man who gave Oasis their first TV appearance on The Word, in conversation with the original drummer, Tony McCarroll. Microdot's Brian Cannon will have a pop-up shop and a Q&A with Terry Christian. And Chris and Tony from The Real People will be giving us an acoustic session. Now, that's in a little over 3 weeks' time. Ticket link is underneath the video, Kev. Will you be coming along?
A pop-up shop on the day I get paid? Oh, dear. Oh, dear. My missus Denise better take my debit card off me, or that could be quite serious.
Some lovely merch.
That could be a serious dent on the day I get paid. Hopefully I'll be getting along to that one. You've got Jackie Mack, is it the night before?
Jackie McNamara, Gracie's on the Friday night, yes.
Jackie's the Friday. I'll be at one of them, but if I had my preference, and this is no offence to Jackie Mack and Gracie's, it will be that one. It will be the Saturday night. That's going to be. I've spoke to Jackie before. Sorry, man, if you're listening to this, but let's see.
Well, apparently Jackie's into Luther Vandross. I tweeted a throwback to the month that he signed for Celtic. He'd done one of those interview Q&A things that were probably written on the back of a fag packet for the Celtic programme. My top 3 holiday destinations, my top 3 records. And Luther Vandross crept into his top 3. I thought he was an indie head with Simon Donnelly.
Maybe before that was before we Sid.
Influenced him.
I got into Sid, maybe. Look, I've got a choice. I've met Jackie quite a few times. I've heard what he's got to say quite a few times, but I've never met Tony McCarroll. I've never seen Tony McCarroll. And to see the guy that done that drum beat of Supersonic, I think that has to be on somebody's bucket list who was a massive Oasis head, if you ken what I mean.
Can I do a big review? Right here, right now. Nothing to do with the Chemical Brothers, but here's the review. On the night at Tuts, the band Boyfriend, I might have mentioned this already, were headlining the gig. And so, as you would do if there was 3 or 4 bands, there was only originally 3, but there was 4. We all know the circumstances. The band who's headlining would set up the drum kit, right? And they would expect all the other bands to come along with their cymbals. I think they're called breakables, things that are easy just to slot into place, but obviously the drum kit's sitting as it is, right? Maybe bring their own stool if they're quite comfy with their own stool. Anyway, McCarroll turns up with an out, maybe a set of drumsticks, that's it. So he asked the boy from Boyfriend, can I use your drum kit? The boy from Boyfriend says yes. And so that 4 songs that he played that night, Tony McCarroll, was played on the Boyfriend's drum kit. Okay, now we've tracked the drum kit down in a dusty old storage unit somewhere and it will be on the stage on that night when Tony McCarroll walks onto the stage. And it would be rude if he wasn't to sit on that stool and play Supersonic. That's all I'm saying. Right.
Oh,
There's a bit of magic dust involved in that, and not that kind of magic dust.
You do ken I'll be there early, and I will be on that drum kit getting my picture took.
You've got to. You've got to. Right. We are up to the 6th Oasis long player. We're 11 years after their debut. And in that 11 years, they've released 6 LPs, a live album, and a B-sides album. And people were saying that Noel got lazy. I don't think he got lazy, Kev. That's an incredible amount of output. And by the way, I think every album resulted in a world tour. Maybe it did, definitely, maybe. I know that they did tour America. Don't know if they had a world tour for definitely, maybe. But they toured the world on every album after that for sure. So 5 world tours, 6 albums, compilation album, a live album. And where we are, this is the way I see it. Definitely maybe exploded Oasis into the scene, got guys like you and me into them, Kev. Morning Glory, closely followed. They had the crossover success, the Wonderwall, Don't Look Back in Anger, American chart success. Third album, often looked back on as being something of a letdown. We looked back on it and we enjoyed it, although it was a bit bloated. I didn't like Magic Pie. I've heard a version of it since that is far better than the album version. So it was a flawed album, I think. Then that was the 1990s. Then we go into the 2000s, Kev. And the first album they released is Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. And if you look back to our show just a few weeks ago, neither of us were big fans of the album. I think that there were some moments in that album, but that and Heathen Chemistry are 2 LPs that could have and should have been so much better. Even just song choices, the song choices of what goes on the LP, what goes on the B-sides, I think were incorrect. And of course, you and I wrote our own versions of the albums, and I've got a playlist which I've sent you for Heathen Chemistry, and it would have been far better than the one that came out. So by this point, and this is the pre-season when Gordon Strachan takes over from Martin O'Neill, and there's a huge transition, and we're going to be talking all about that. I'm looking at Oasis and wondering if it's just a busted flush, if the wheels have come off, and then they release this album. And Kev, I'm going to be pretty bold. For me, it's up there, potentially in the top 3 Oasis albums. This is me revisiting it. I'm putting it out there. I want to know your thoughts.
I'm not going to disagree. This is the first album since 1997 that actually sounds it's been made by a band.
Yes.
It actually sounds
There's
like it's been made by a band.
Aye,
it sounds like it's been made by a band. I think maybe the introduction of Zach Starkey had something to do with that as well, because his drumming on this album's absolutely phenomenal. Completely different for Alan White. It's a completely different drum sound that he's actually got there. Where Giants and Heathen Chemistry sounded like a band trying to sound like an old band, this sounds like a band who are meant to, what Oasis were meant to sound like in 2005. Whereas the other 2 albums, I think, they're trying to recreate something. By this album, they're not recreating it. Then what you've got to actually think that this band's now been together, apart from the drummer, for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got more comfortable with each other. They know each other. This is more a band album, and I think it actually shows.
I totally agree with that. I agree with that. If you look at the inlay of Definitely Maybe, you've got pictures of like Liam Gallagher wearing a Beatles t-shirt, and by album 6, they've got the son of a member of the Beatles in the band. It's like the transition of this band for me is exactly what you say. By the time we get to album number 6, they're tight. There's a flow to it. There's contributions from 4 different songwriters again. But it's not a bitty album for me. It flows from start to finish, Kev. And by the way, at the very end of this, we go on about the B-sides that should have been on the LP. And this isn't me belittling the B-sides. I'm not replacing any of the songs, Kev. I am actually not making a track list change. Wait a minute, though. If I was to make a track list change, it might be that the final tracks moved in a wee bit earlier in the LP. I don't think Let There Be Love is a fantastic closing track, but I would still have it on the album. Maybe just put it somewhere else. So it's really interesting for me to look back on this, because I do remember it at the time being a very good album. And obviously you go and you see them in the tour. And I really enjoyed that. And the singles, as always, were were hit singles.
Oh,
But normally there's one or two B-sides that would have crept on the LP. No, this time for me, Kev.
well, I got it. I agree with you. This is probably their best post 2000 LP. This is probably their most complete post 2000 LP. It's the one that sounds like a band. It's the one that sounds most like BDI. No, remember you were saying about Heath and Chemistry. A lot of the stuff on that was absolutely crap, and it reminds you of BDI. This reminds me Mary BDI when you actually see the songs. Andy Bell's songs on this are absolutely fantastic. I mean, I've replaced 4 songs with the B-sides, but only because of my strange taste. I think the 2 songs that Liam writes on this, the 2 B-sides that he wrote, are actually better. And but it's no, I'm not replacing them because they're bad songs. It's just my taste. I'm just going, nah, by the way, that one's a bit better than that. I don't that, and it's no, but it would be a fantastic Japanese bonus album with all the songs on it. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I counted 6 B-sides and bonus tracks. No, 7 B-sides and bonus tracks that could have been on this album.
Yeah.
And there's one of them that I think, aye. But I agree with you. If you hadn't told me the B-sides, if I hadn't went and found the B-sides, and you've got to remember, I've only heard the B-sides over the last 2 days because I've never actually bothered with the B-sides since 1997. When I first heard this album, I went, I'm not changing anything. Then I heard the B-sides and I went, I might actually change that. And it's no because it's no because some of them they're absolutely rotten. It's just that my taste is, I think something's better.
Okay, but that's fine. That's what it's all about. You and boys asking if it's 2005 we're talking about. It certainly is. It's a time of change. Celtic have just won the Scottish Cup, beating Dundee United 1-0. And actually, on the 30th of May, when was that game? That is a good point. When did we win the Scottish Cup? The goal was scored by Alan Thompson, who we spoke to on Friday night. He was great fair. I heard you talking yesterday, Kev, about your David Ginola story. I just thought I'd throw that in. 2 days before this album was released, we just won the Scottish Cup in what became Martin O'Neill's final game in charge. It was a time of transition. A lot of players played their final games that day, and then we move on to the Gordon Strachan era. There's a rebuilding job, slightly different approach from that of his predecessor. And you look at the tour. I don't know if you've ever watched the tour documentary, which is called Lord, Don't Slow Me Down. And that spawned a standalone single of the same name, which was sung by Noel Gallagher. It was released a couple of years after the album. A Liam sang version of that song was unearthed at a later date, and I think it's better. I don't know if you agree with that. But obviously that song may or may not have been kicking around about the time of these sessions. I still don't think that song makes it on the album. This is how highly I rate this. But this, interestingly, Kev, this is the LP that the first session was recorded and produced by Death in Vegas, right? So they recorded 10 tracks, and I've always been interested in that session because 6 of the tracks were binned. And to my knowledge, we've never heard them. There might be an Oasis aficionado in there who can tell me different. 4 of the tracks made it onto the album in different guises. Turn Up the Sun, Mucky Fingers, A Bell Will Ring, and The Meaning of Soul. So they 4 songs were part of the original sessions. And of course, Liam worked with Richard Fearless on Scorpio Rising as well. It's an eclectic collection in that Andy Bell writes 2, Game Archer writes 1, Noel writes 5, and Liam writes 3, 1 being a co-write with Game. And let's get stuck in, Kev. Track number 1, the opener, is an Andy Bell track, Turn Up the Sun. Thoughts?
Brilliant. It's a bit of psychedelic pop. It's like eating a Starburst lolly in a heat wave, man. It's superb. What a great way to start the album. And it's got like this sort of tempo which Oasis albums didn't usually start at. It's like kind of, we're going to ease you in gently here before we hit you with the big stuff. I'm a big fan of Andy Bell solo stuff as well, and I'm a big fan of Andy Bell with Ride. And Andy Bell solo stuff has always been psychedelic pop. And the 2 songs that he does on this is just basically a normal Andy Bell song, but he's just got the greatest voice since John Lydon singing on it. And that's it. That's the thing. Turn Up the Sun is an absolutely fantastic song. Absolutely brilliant song. And I would actually, Drew Mac CFC comes in with us. I actually agree with that.
I'm getting that.
I do agree with that. Andy Bell wrote the 2 best songs on this album.
On the last album, you'll remember, Kev, that I replaced an Andy Bell track
with
an
Andy terrible.
Bell, an Andy Bell
Peep was
B-side. Because I felt that the B-side was better than a quick peep, and the B-side was, I'm just going to double check it, put the volume down so I don't play it and get done for copyright. It is Thank You for the Good Times. I thought that was phenomenal, and that was an Andy Bell track on the last album, but it was on the B-side. Yeah, totally agree with you. And what a superb introduction or reintroduction of Liam Gallagher, who is singing it like his life depended on it after his big brother criticised him for his sloppy performance in the previous LP. It's also got, for me, the best lyric, and it's the opening lyric on the album. I carry a madness everywhere I go. Now, Andy Bell might be writing it, but he's writing it for Liam. He's writing it perfectly for the frontman. So a great start to the LP, a better start than Celtic's European campaign this season, but we'll get to that, Kev. Now, where were you in 2005 when this album was released?
Where was I in 2005?
Were you still selling livestock?
No, I was in the civil service by this point. No, I would actually move to the company that I'm still working for just now. On April the 1st, 2005, I moved to my current employer.
That's incredible.
Now I come to think about it. Where was I? Preparing to get married. I got married on the 9th of July in Rhodes that year. So I was probably listening to this song onto my stag night at Whitley Bay. Because that would have been, I think that was a week after the Scottish Cup final.
I've never had a stag. I've never had a stag do.
We'll need to get you a post-dated one.
People will be going, that's because you've no mates, Paul, because it's normally your mates that organise that. Cheers, everybody in the comments.
So I would have been in that sort of countdown to getting married, trying to get over Black Sunday, trying to get over Martin O'Neill leaving.
Yeah,
it was a very emotional roller coaster time.
Very emotional
roller coaster time.
It was, and I'll tell you, I remember at the time also, Lee Strachan, who I've got a lot of time for. I've got a lot of time for Gordon Strachan. But I remember at the time, there was what kind of reaction was it, Kev? Obviously, we didn't have the wonders of social media at the time to gauge that reaction. But I just don't think everybody bought into it initially, and then the start of the season wasn't as convincing as we would have liked, but it turned out pretty well in the end. Now, I remember exactly where I was the first time I heard track number 2 in this album. And I'm going to make a prediction here, Kev. I'm going to predict, because you and I, this is a strange thing, we've got the same taste in music, but very, very different taste in specific songs. And that much has been proven over the previous 5 albums that we've looked at here. I'm a massive fan of track 2. I don't think you will be. You've got a wee smile on your face. I'm not sure if that means that I'm wrong or right. Noel Gallagher writes it. It's Mucky Fingers. It's Kingsley Leon. And I remember exactly where I was the first time I heard it, because it was played on the radio. And I'm sure, I really am sure, that it was played on the radio and it was the first song I heard on the album, right? This could be a Mandela moment. I don't know. You know that Mandela effect where you think you remember something, but you've made it up. And it was announced as going to be the lead single from the album, which obviously we know it wasn't. Mucky Fingers. So first and foremost, do you agree? Cracking track.
Cracking track.
Oh.
Yes.
So you agree with me?
Disagree with the Kings of Leon take. It sounds like Waiting for My Man by the Velvet Underground. That's what it sounds like.
But they probably ripped them off. Kings of Leon probably ripped them off.
When I first heard the drive, the first thing I was sort of reminded of was the Velvet Underground. And I think this is one of the tracks that worked with Zach Starkey on the drums, because it's very Who-like drumming on it. This has got my best lyric on it, Mucky Fingers. I think this is Noel's best song on the album. For me, I think this is the best song that Noel's written on the album. My favourite lyric is, "You can squeeze into the emperor's clothes. You found your God in a paper bag. You get your history from the Union Jack, and all your brothers and sisters are gone and they won't come back." I think he's having a go at the Parker heads there.
Possibly. It's time to move on.
It's time to move on, And I think the sound of this album was a move on for the previous two, And
definitely.
If I look at that lyric, I think he's actually having a wee pop at the folk who still think it's 1995.
The people who are still swaggering about with a Liam or no feathered cut calling their wee brother our kid, even though they're from Fife, right?
Aye.
Plunge, they're still kicking about, by the way. I think they're now called Well Ends, aren't they? They get called Well Ends.
Did they? No, I didn't care.
Because they try and wear the hair like Paul Weller.
All right, Well Ends.
Well Ends, yes. Plunge McNugget, by the way, there's more to music than Oasis. Yeah, we know. Absolutely get that. But we're covering the discography of Oasis because we've got an Oasis night. I think if you were to pilfer through both Kevin's and my record collection, you would find all sorts of things in it, all sorts of delights in there, from Mogwai to the Sugar Babes, Plunge. So, yeah, absolutely get that. Favourite album of all time, Kev, beyond Oasis, just in general, maybe just to give Plunge an idea into your musical taste?
It's the Stone Roses, but that probably doesn't do anything. That probably doesn't do. I'm a bit obvious that way. Favourite other album, like you've got Forever Changes Be Love.
Yes.
You've got that as an absolute brilliant album. I do like a bit of the Floyd. I do like a bit of Animals by Pink Floyd.
I'm just looking at the release date. The release date of Forever Changes was November 1967. So we wouldn't quite shoehorn it into the European Cup campaign, but we could do 67, 68 and cover Forever
I did actually
Changes.
talk about doing that on the charity weekend. We were going to do a Screamacelica and we were going to do Forever Changes.
We were actually, yeah. We used to remember the T-shirt. We used to have the T-shirt, the Celtic version of it. Anyway, we will come back to that and absolutely Plunge, but we're also taking requests. So somebody requested If I Should Fall From Grace. Is that right?
If I Should Fall From the Grace of God.
From the Grace of God by the Pogues.
The Pogues, aye.
So we might come to that. We might do some Peter Band.
That's 87, 88, so it's a centenary season.
Oh, we'll do that. The Blonde Parade. That sounds like a band. And it looks like band artwork as well. Amazing album. Aye, I like that. Mucky Fingers, the only one I skip. We've just been bigging it up. The only one that he skips, he or she. Turn Up the Sun is one of the best opening tracks to any Oasis album. Yeah, get that. Totally.
Yes. Aye.
And all the songs work great live. Gem and Andy's best contributions also. It promised lots. If you look at the sales figures, it looked as though many people who had kind of lost a bit of faith over the previous two albums were back on the Oasis train, Kev. It was one of their biggest grossing world tours as well. It was as if, all right, like you say, this is what Oasis should be sounding like a decade in. Mucky Fingers, right. So where did I hear it? Where did I hear it for that first time where I've got my Mandela memory where I think it was meant to be the first single? I ran a wee shop, believe it or not, Kev. You knew that?
I knew that.
I ran a wee shop and I remember it every single day, switching on the power and the music would come on and the music would be played through the speakers all day, every single day. So every time I hear Mucky Fingers, it takes me back to those memories, which were not all great memories, I've got to say. However, let me know in the comment section, am I the only one that remembers that being cited as a potential single? We know it didn't come out as a single, but the third track, Lyla, did. This is another no pen song. I'm hearing this. I was just reading during the week there, Kev, that it was written for Heathen Chemistry. It's on the Heathen Chemistry demo CD that's actually put up to the camera during one of these wee tour docs. So there's obviously been versions of it kicking around for a while, but it becomes the lead single of Don't Believe the Truth. I can understand why, but still not one of my favourite songs. Not droppable, I'd still keep it where it is, but no one of my favourite songs, no one of my favourite singles from Oasis.
It's no droppable. It's a fantastic live track. Live, it was stomping. A bit of a glam racket going on there, A bit of like the glam drums. There's a big drum beat in that, Did you know it was meant to be called Smiler?
I didn't know that.
It was meant to be called Hey Smiler, but
it's a better name.
But Game Archer's band Heavy Stereo had a song called Smiler, so they changed it.
Wow.
So
and they don't even sing Lyla; they sing Lala, as in the
aye.
Laz, don't they?
Yes.
And you know,
So
you were
that was-
talking about the B-sides. I have never, until today, seen the video of that song.
No?
And it's probably due to the fact, I mean, as we move on, I've seen the importance of being idle a million times, a fantastic video, we'll talk about it. But where I was when this kind of stuff was coming out, Kev, I was in a shop where I was working 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day. So I didn't really have much downtime to like watch MTV and stuff, which would have been the platform where you would have seen it. So today I was just trying to remember what the video was, and I looked at it, and it was on the Oasis official channel. First time I have ever seen that. Right, I'm going to get into the B-sides, though, Kev, because the note I've got here are the B-sides are B-sides. Eyeball Tickler, and Won't Let You Down. Now, Won't Let You Down is brilliant. That's a Liam track, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is phenomenal. But it's not replacing anything off the album for me. I've got the feeling that it might be different for you.
It is different. It does replace something on the album for me. And so does Eyeball Tickler. Or Eyeball Liquor, as I've wrote down there. Be some thing with.
Right, come on then.
What does it replace? For me, it replaces the God Thinks I'm Able. A decent song, but I think Won't Let You Down is better. For a Liam penned track, I think it is better.
That's interesting. Is it going to divide opinion? Let us know in the comments section either. If you're watching live or if you're an Oasis fan watching this on a catch-up, do you agree with Kev's omission? He's dropping tracks, he's adding B-sides. I've already said I'm dropping nothing. I'm not saying this is a perfect album, Kev, but when you're faced with a collection of songs that they had at their disposal at the time, I think they got it right. I think the track listing's right. But I did make an alternative track listing for Hearing Chemistry, which I've been listening to over the last week or so since we've done the show, and I much prefer the album with the B-sides on it. So there you go. Now, I'm going to bring in Chris Jardin. I saw that at Monkeys in 2005, and they had the energy of Oasis 1994. By this point, Oasis seemed to have replaced that energy with monotonous strumming. How does a band keep that energy, Kev? Is it due to changes in lineups? How do they keep that energy? Because 94, 95 Oasis is an Oasis where they really are writing songs to escape something. It's about escapism. There's an anger to a lot of the lyrics. They're trying to, fly, and they're talking about that a lot in the lyrics. By the time you get to this stage, they're all multi-millionaires. And I think it's difficult. I think the motivation is different. So Noel is probably sitting there writing songs thinking, right, I need a song that's going to get the crowd going at a big stadium, rather than sitting there, with nothing but a pen and paper and an acoustic guitar, dreaming, escaping the monotony of his life as it was back in the 90s.
You can't recapture it, can you? You can't recapture that. It's the same as the Arctic Monkeys can't recapture what they were like in 2005 now, because they're completely different people in a completely different band on a completely different level. I suppose it goes for being a dream to becoming a job, which must be quite difficult jump, especially when it's a multi-million pound, that there's guys absolutely like relying on you to actually give them wages. You're doing a 2-year world tour here, and all these boys are going, way setting up the stage and all of that. It's a completely different, you own your own record company by this point. I think it's a mistake if artists try and reclaim their early fever or early like spirit, because it will be false.
It will
completely false. You're never going to do it. You probably should chuck it.
It's like Mercury Rev, Deserters songs. In order for them to get that, they had to go away and live in the Catskills Mountains, Kev. You know what I
Aye.
mean? And kind of like be isolated with nothing but their instruments. And then what came from that was an atmospheric record that absolutely suited their environment. If your environment is decadence, money, fur coats, designer gear, and getting invited to the opening of a fridge, then how are you going to write a song that's going to inspire the people who are actually buying it, which are the working classes? And I think that most bands have that same dilemma at some point, and it's very difficult to stay true to the fan base that put you where you were.
Remember, you says basically at this point you wanted to see Oasis live, and they were only releasing albums at this point so they could sell tickets for Hampden or Murrayfield or Wembley or wherever they were going to play. By this point they're into the Rolling Stones business. But they've got to release albums to actually be able to do that. And as I say, this is the first album I actually thought it was a band that sounded like a band since Be Here Now. But there's a reason when you watch the Nebworth documentaries and all the other documentaries now, they go, that we should have chucked it in 1997 after Nebworth because we were never going to recapture what we had. And that's how that's how bands have only got a shelf life. That's how bands burn out, and you go, it's a nostalgic kind of, they come back, and you go, nah, maybe you shouldn't have done. And that's why Alan McGee, half the room didn't want Oasis to reform, and half the room kind of went, it'll be all right. But I'm in the half has gone, no way, didn't try and recapture it. Oasis, Liam's Oasis Okies done it for the younger generation. We didn't need it back. The youngsters can bog off. We've had it.
Well, we'll see what they say in the comment section. Plunge McNugget, Super Scoreboard are late to the party, mate. We spoke about that at 12:30, the ridiculous decision of moving the cup final. Rather than debating a poor Oasis album, well, I tell you something, Super Scoreboard are late to the party, and you'll never get them talking about a poor Oasis album. So the variety that we offer on a daily basis is far outweighing that of Super Scoreboard, my friend. Right. The Blonde Parade are back because I love that artwork. Seen them twice on this tour at Hampden, then at the SECC around Christmas. I think that was the night that Roy Keane signing was announced, and we learned about Roy Keane, obviously, from previous guests on the show, and we might be asking somebody else who was involved in that signing very, very soon about the circumstances behind it. John Duncan, Kingsley Leon better than Oasis. Do you agree with that, Kev?
No.
Definitely. Are you going to expand on that, Kev?
Kingsley Leon looked better, sounded better when they looked like deviant brothers out of Deliverance. Then all of a sudden they shaved off their beards and that, and they became middle of the road, pointless crap.
Yeah, I'm struggling to disagree with that. Some of their early stuff was phenomenal. 3 albums, Kev? 3 albums and then bust? I
couldn't tell you. I've never paid attention after the first one.
Yeah, I think, 3 albums and then bust for me. Drew Ma, CFC. Whitley Bay is outstanding for a night out. Is it near Newcastle, Whitley Bay, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Seemingly it's all been gentrified now, and it's not the place to go for. They're not the kind of place that explodes at night anymore, with people travelling down from Newcastle on the metro.
Wow.
So I've been told.
There you go. I've not been back, but maybe the Axom crew will organise that long-awaited stag do for me. Love Like a Bomb is the next track. It's a Liam and Gem co-write. I think it's a good change in tempo in terms of the actual structure of the album. And I think that also is a good indication of the development of Liam Gallagher's songwriting ability. For me, this is the kind of song that BDI would write, Kev, and I'm going to qualify that because it doesn't have a chorus. So it's a great album track, right? So it's nice, it's sitting there, it's cracking, it's an album track, right? For me, it's in between a couple of songs that I would suggest are kind of high points of the album, 2 singles. You've got Love Like a Bomb that works almost like a bridge, but there's no chorus in the song. There's no memorable chorus, right? And a lot of the BDI songs were like that as well. So they work pretty well as album tracks, but the BDI issue that I think they had was they were struggling to find a hit single to elevate the band beyond the proper hardcore Oasis fans who would buy anything by Liam and Noel. But yeah, I think it's a good bridge between the two singles.
It's a decent song, but it's one that I found quite easy to replace. When I heard the B-sides, as you say, it sounds a bit too, for me, English Beatles for me. It just sounds like they've went into the studio and went, right, oh, I've been listening to Rubber Soul, or you've got your suede jacket on, Liam, your suede leather coat. Let's do something for Rubber Soul. That's what it sounds like to me. I replaced this with Can You See It Now, which was a Noel written song which appeared. No, he sings on it.
Does he?
I
never got that far.
There is a version when he does actually sing, yes.
Right.
Because I think it suits it better. And it's not because Love Like a Bomb, as you say, it is a good album track.
Mm-hmm.
But just when you went for Turn Up the Sun, Mucky Fingers, Lyla, Smiler, whatever it was meant to be called, and if you hit that with another Velvet Underground-ish riff there, then to take you into the importance of being idle, I think that flows far, far better than Love Like a Bomb. And it's a terrible title. I mean, I didn't like the title, and maybe that's why I've got something against it. Love Like a Bomb, man.
Is it reminding you of Sex Bomb? Is that what it is?
It's just cheesy, eh?
All right.
Cheesy title.
A cheesy song title. Even though this is kind of like post-Watershed, it's not actually, but you know what I mean? It's a wee bit later than our 12:30. I'm not going to ask you to expand on what you were saying yesterday about David Ginola, because we know that people who are of a younger generation still listen to this show later on, Kev. So we don't want that kind of filth to be mentioned on an AXOM show. The Importance of Being Idle is up next. It's a Noel Gallagher track.
I suppose if Love Like the Bomb was about David Ginola, it'd be Love Like a Wee Grenade.
Not even a grenade. Love Like the End of a Matchstick. The Importance of Being Idle, Noel Gallagher song. For me, this is, you're actually getting an insight into the future of Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. This is a song that would have lived on that debut album of Noel's solo career. It's a superb song, don't get me wrong. The video is absolutely outstanding. And can you tell me the band that Rhys Ifans was in? He's obviously starring in the video. What band was he in before he made it big as an actor?
Oh, no.
It was a band who also released an album in 2005. Who also had the word love in the title. It was Lovecraft by Super Furry Animals. Rhys Ifans used to be in Super Furry Animals.
Did he?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And also, he was in that film that you thought was horrific that I brought up last week, that Forced to Nature demo appeared on, and you said you would watch it. I know you've not watched it yet, though.
No, I haven't watched it, no.
There you go. And
but he was also in Twin Town, which is immense.
Oh, super.
So that's...
Couple of sea boys. So this is a delve into Noel as a solo artist for me.
We'll get it back to football, but almost like Dougray Scott when he's talking about Twin Town, eh? And he says, did they put you in a Rangers top because like they ken that you were a Hibs fan? He says, no, my character was that much of a bugger. He could only have ever been a Rangers fan, so that's why he wore a Rangers top.
I heard that interview. I don't know if it was in a magazine, but I've definitely read or heard that, because they initially, I think the producer or director wanted him to wear a Jambo top and thought it would really annoy him because he's a Hibbie, and he was like, no, this goes beyond, that character goes beyond being a Hearts fan. We need to go the full hog, and he's bouncing about wearing the Rangers top. By the way, before we get to the B-sides, the front cover, I've been critical of the non-90s artwork. I think post Microdot, the Oasis artwork went downhill. However, this single, cracking cover. Brilliant.
Oh, it is.
It's a beauty.
I think they get the artwork spot on with this, apart from the Let It Be Love single. But like the album and the two front covers, it's very, very classic, and they've went back to the original sort of a take on the original logo and stuff like that, and it's very, very simple and it's no like Stand on the Shoulders of Giants. That's an absolute dreadful album cover. absolutely dreadful album cover. Everything round about that time was dreadful at the
It's a
top.
typeface. It's a typeface, Kev. Why change that classic logo and come up with that nonsense? It looks like an Ocean Pacific kind of like T-shirt for the 1980s. You know what I mean? OP with that daft writing, the kind of thing you would buy down the beach. You know what I mean, for an emergency T-shirt. And Oasis changed the classic logo to that nonsense. But as a song, we've not actually spoken about the song though. I have compared it to a lot of the kind of no-penned stuff that we hear a lot later.
You can now say it's the glimpse of the future. It's
Yeah.
now the glimpse of Noel Gallagher solo. But I remember hearing it at the time and going, "Whoa, that's a bit different for them as a band." And even I thought the video was a bit different for them as a band because they're virtually acting in it.
I know.
Even though they're only just playing chords and then stuff like that. But it's got a very I love the vibe of the video as well, the black and white. I think it's based on Billy Liar, eh?
I don't know.
I think that's what it's actually based on, aye.
I'm just delighted that I've let you know that Rhys Evans used to be in Super Funny Animals.
I didn't know that.
There you go. You and Boy Martin, Beatles Sgt. Pepper album from 1967. Best album and best year ever. I don't disagree with that last bit. We should probably cover it, says Barry. What about doing Sgt. Pepper's one week? I distinctly remember Billy McNeil being interviewed and he said it was his favourite album. Pretty sure I read that in Shoot magazine in the 80s. I know that we Jinky and Bobby were also big Beatles fans. Mucky Fingers is still a great tune. Punky protest type song for me. And it's a song that survived. It survived right through into Noel Gallagher's solo career. We can call it a solo career. And it was, you know, when he done the first album, he was still singing Mucky Fingers. By that stage, before we get to the meaning of soul, Kev, let's talk a wee bit about Celtic. The transition to Gordon Strachan. No great start to the season.
No. After the bad end to the following season, to go to Armedia Bratislava, the worst ever team to play in the Champions League, and get absolutely hammered.
At the time, perhaps, but not since, because there's been a worse team since.
There's been a worse team since. I can't remember who that is, but there we go. No, to get absolutely hammered. And I think it was a mistake on the night, because I think Stratton made a big mistake on the night, because I think he brought through on, was it Ali there? Is that how you say it? I can't remember how you actually say it.
Him that's actually telling everybody that West Ham are a bigger club than Celtic, because he was an absolute flop when he came up on loan from Arsenal.
I think Stratton brought on McGeady and Alastair when it was 2-0. Instead, he just gone, this is not working, and we'll take 2-0 back to Celtic Park. I remember the return leg at Celtic, but if that game was 10 minutes longer, we were overturning that 5-0.
I know.
Because they completely and utterly sick boyed the bed. No sick boyed, spudded the bed at that point. As soon as we took the kick off, we humped it forward, and their right back sliced it right out for a throw and down the corner flag, and I went like, oh, we've got them. If we score early enough, this is on. It didn't actually happen, but it was aye. Then the following week, I think we draw 4 each at Fir Park. First game of the season. I actually go back to Fir Park after.
Hartson scores a couple. Yeah.
Craig Beattie scores the equaliser.
I've played with him at football on a football park.
Was he playing for Rangers?
No.
Was it
I've obviously never played for Rangers. I have played alongside Craig Beattie. Yeah. And by the way, it was one of the things I always remember. A couple of my mates who signed professional, and I used to go and watch them play reserve football. I've said this a few times. And I used to slag off certain players. I was reminded that they were obscenely better than anybody I'd ever played with. And you sit and you watch Craig Beattie and you think this, that, and the other. But what a player when you actually see him up close. Unbelievable. But there you go. Craig Beattie, I have played alongside him. Not the best player I've ever played alongside, Kev. Paddy Lavery, welcome to the show. Evening, Paul, John, and Kevin. Good to see you as always. And we're reminded of that brilliant Hey Hey My on that tour, which was on the Familiar to Millions. What we're going to do is we're going to cover that album along with the other live album that they released not that long ago in Nebworth. We're going to do it in the same show, 2 live albums for one. And by the way, go out and check out the Blown Parade, band from Ayr, second single out tomorrow on Spotify. And I've got to say, I like what I'm seeing already. So let's get
like
them
that.
checked out.
I'm going to bring up Mad Dog here. Oasis, wee sicky face. Anyone posting here as a pro from a council estate. What's up with that?
What's a pro? What, seriously?
Like,
I'm being serious.
an
What's a pro?
underclass, working
A
class.
pro? Is that what that is? Never
A
heard
pro from a working estate, from a council estate.
Anyway.
I will. I was. So there you go.
Nah, but that was one of the big reasons that the band captured the imagination of a whole generation, Kev, is because you were looking at them coming from nothing and basically becoming very quickly the biggest band on the planet. And what that does is it inspires a lot of people to start bands. And you know, that only so many bands can do that. Only so many bands inspire others to say, well, if you guys can do it, so can I. So, aye, fair enough. I'm from a council estate as well.
The pros were the common people in Orwell's 1984.
I've never read that. I've never read 84. But there you go. Thanks for that. I mean, dearie me, it's an education on here on a Screamacelica. It was a recommendation from Noel Gallagher on some TV programme that got me listening to Dove's Forever and Ever Celtic. What a band. They also released Some Cities this year. In fact, I think you also mentioned Richard Ashcroft, thankful for both NG's Nordstrom. Richard Ashcroft, the association with him was actually through Microdot's Brian Cannon, by the way. Brian Cannon had done the artwork to Verve, who became The Verve, from the very first single. They had met each other at a party in Wigan. And Richard was going on about this band that he was in. Brian was saying, I'm a sleeve designer, and Richard thought that was the coolest job in the world. Fast forward a few months, and Brian goes for a pint of milk from the local garage, and it's 4 or 5 in the morning. Kev, what are the kinds of parties that you used to have with your mates? And as he's in the garage, he bumps into who other than Richard Ashcroft, who's gone to the same garage to buy himself some cigarettes, and he reveals that they've been signed to Virgin Records, and obviously they released it on the subsidiary Hut. And he said, you're doing the cover art as promised in their previous discussion. So he did. And Noel Gallagher loved it. And he got them to do the same. They met in a lift because Microdot shared the building with the Inspiral Carpets at this time. And there was a lift to all the various floors. That's what lifts normally do. And when they're in this lift, Noel Gallagher's wearing a pair of Adidas trainers that he had picked up whilst on tour with the Inspirals, Kev. Brian Cannon, being an aficionado of Adi Dassler, looks down and says, where the FUCK did you get those trainers? And a relationship from there developed. And he started doing all the Oasis.
All meant to be.
And what else did he design? He designed the Beta Band 3 EPs, Kev, Microdot. There you go.
Where that tiger comes from. I really want Richard Ashcroft to have met Brian Cannon at that petrol station on the outskirts of Manchester, barefooted. If he wasn't barefooted, then it kind of loses its shine for me.
Story. It ruins its beauty. Right, okay. I'm going to bring this back up because I've learned a new word. Thanks, Mad Dog. A prole from a council estate. Right. And incidentally, with regards to that, why did I bring up Microdot? Well, it was a shameless plug for the gig that we're doing in 3 weeks. Come along, tickets underneath. It's going to be cracking. And we're going to have the original drum kit as well. That was played at Tots that night. The Meaning of Soul. Kevin, I am going to predict that you're also going to drop this song.
I do drop it, yes. Not because it's a bad song, but I think Eyeball... I'm going to say tickler there, but because I've wrote it down as liquor, Eyeball Tickler is a better song of the same type, and it's longer. I think Meaning of Soul's only about 1 minute 20 or something like that, and it's just getting gone, then it stops, and I think Eyeball Tickler is better of that sort of thrashy, punky type tune.
I mean, I've already I've stapled my colours to the mast early doors, and I said I'm not making any changes. Not because I think that the B-sides are bad. I just think they're B-sides. I think the album, the structure of the album is why it flows so well, and I would be reluctant to make any changes to it. I'm going to bring this up here from Paw Patrol. Is this back to the old format, talking about old games and music at the end? Loved that and thought it should have never changed. The format was always as it is right now, whereby we would talk football and music intertwined throughout the programme. We changed it a wee bit when we went fully produced inside the studio. The only reason we stopped that is because of our videographer's illness. But Kevin and I are going to keep the Screamacelica fires burning. However, there is a new show in the works, which I'm pretty sure you're going to be pretty impressed with. And it will be on the Axom channel very, very soon. If you haven't done so already, give us a big thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel.
Who's your favourite member of Paw Patrol?
Paw Patrol. The wee
Paul
kind
Junior's
of
bound to be into them.
It has been. He's been and gone. You know what he's into right now? I'm going to answer your question, but right now he's into bouncing about the house thinking he's Jerry Cinnamon because he's just got a harmonica. The wee kind of bulldog guy that's got the red hat. What's his name? You know who I'm talking about.
The yellow one.
Just a nice
Rubble.
look about him. That's
Rubble.
him. Rubble, aye. Just got a nice wee look about him. I feel a bit sorry for him. I think he's maybe
Rubble, aye.
lacking a wee bit in confidence. So he's my favourite character, Kev. What about you?
Chase. I like Chase.
It's a bit predictable though, eh?
It was very predictable, aye.
Right. A step above Little James for me. Yeah, I think everything
Definitely,
Liam does on this album is a step above that. And also on the Heathen Chemistry album, although I did drop Better Man. I thought Born on a Different Cloud and Songbird were brilliant. Guess God Thinks I'm Able, Kev. I'm not dropping it, mate. I think it's actually one of Liam's finest songs to date. I think it's absolutely superb. You've already told us that you're dropping it for a
Aye. I do think it's like I do think Won't Let You Down is better than it. I'm not saying God Thinks I'm Able is a bad song. It would stand up on any album, any solo albums since that point. It would really, really stand up on them. But just when I heard Won't Let You Down, I'm like, that should have been in there. That I find that better than God Thinks I'm Able. And that's it. That's the only reason. It's not because I think it's absolutely a Ryan Kent a song. I just think it's like, there's a better song there.
You know this, Kev? I know your nature, having been on Axon with you now for 6 years. If Guess God Thinks I'm Able was a B-side, you'd be shouting for it to be on the album, right?
Definitely.
Of course you would. Now, Drew Mack is right, because I bet you we know what song he's talking about. The song you're talking about, Drew Mack, is The Importance of Being Idle. It absolutely is the sister song of The Death of You and Me. That's a great shout.
It is a great shout.
It is a brilliant shout. Guess God Thinks I'm Able stays for me is dropped by Kev, and he has admitted that if it wasn't on the album, he'd be putting it on there. But that's just the nature of this individual who shared the screen with me now for 6 years. Forever and Ever Celtic, Twin Town. Applause. Brilliant. What's your favourite part about that movie? I love when they're having bongs in the bath, two brothers. You know that really is his brother.
Yes. That's when they have the conversation about the FA Cup final flags, eh?
Cup. That one. That's it. Love it. I'm going to have to go and watch that back now. But you must watch Love, Honour and Obey. Everybody that's out there
I think it's just the guy
tuning into
flying
this.
pickets in it, eh? You always just remember that guy for the flying pickets singing. I'm going what was the number one hit the flying pickets had? Anyway, but he hasn't changed faith when you saw him on Top of the Pops when you were a wee laddie, and he appears
Great
in this.
set of side chops.
Oh, definitely. It's like the boy's side chops that appears in the Rangers Are Gone Bust video in Inverness. That guy's got the best pair of side chops I've ever seen in my life.
Talking about that actor.
Every Celtic game I go to, I look for that boy with his sideys. Never seen him yet.
Isn't he also in Svengali with Johnny Owen?
He might be.
He plays his dad. I'm sure he does. He plays his old fella. What is that song? They're playing darts in the video, eh?
Oh.
Come on. Give us a shout in the comments. We're not going to Google it because we're at an age, Kevin and I, where we need to get the grey matter working a wee bit on a daily basis. And we move on to part of the queue, Noel Gallagher. And I just think, there's a wee change in tempo. Noel comes in. It's a vintage kind of Noel track for me. Absolutely love it. But it's got him in kind of like reflective mood. But I'm going to go back to what you said about the drums. I think the drums roll this song along, and brilliant vocals by Noel Gallagher.
Actually,
Kev's going to come back and say I'm going to drop it.
I'm going to drop it. I'm going to drop it because I think it's a bit null by numbers, but Lord Don't Slow Me Down's available. And Lord Don't Slow Me Down should have been on this album, and it could replace that, no problem.
With Noel or Liam on the vocals?
No.
You prefer the original?
Mm-hmm. I would put Lord Don't Slow Me Down instead of that song, just because I believe that Lord Don't Slow Me Down is a far better song than Part of the Queue. And that's not to say Part of the Queue's rubbish. Part of the Queue could walk onto Heath and Chemistry, it could walk onto Stand on the Souls of the Giants, no problem. But he's got Lord Don't Slow Me Down there.
He does have that. I mean, there's other tracks that never appeared on the B-sides. That's one of them. And although it wasn't released for another 2 years, you get the sense that it was kicking about at this time. And obviously, it was part of the documentary for this particular album. The other songs, Can You See It Now? I Can See It Now. Kevin's already replaced a song on this album with that. And the third one, and we mentioned this last week, was a 2005 track. So released in the same year, Kev, on the Goal soundtrack. And it's a song called Who Put the Weight of the World on My Shoulders. And I always remember that song and thinking that, oh, that should have been on an album. That's a great song. But I just can't shoehorn it onto this album.
No, I can't shoehorn onto this album. This album's got a different sound.
Absolutely.
You can't shoehorn it onto this album at all.
I can't put it on. Cannot put it on. I might have put it on as the B-side because one of the B-sides was a live version of a track. Was it Rock and Roll Star, wasn't it? A much later version of Rock and Roll Star. Listen, I just think there's more merit in putting on an original song rather than a live version of a song that we've all heard for 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me. In terms of the Celtic situation then, Kevin, one thing I've mentioned time and time again is the change in approach from Martin O'Neill's introduction as a Celtic manager and the spend that he had, not only the transfer fees, but also in the wages, plucking guys from English leagues with big English wages like Chris Sutton, Alan Thompson, Neil Lennon, a wee bit later, John Hartson, but also Magnus Hedman, Steve Guppy, big wages, Kev. And what came of that, obviously, is huge success. But there was a downsizing when Gordon Strachan came in. And I think the best example is that we had Craig Bellamy in on loan. We had the option to buy him at that time, and he would have cost us £5 million. Gordon Strachan wrote in his book that that was his transfer budget. So instead of bringing in Bellamy, and he's a player that he knew well from his time at Coventry, Kev, he decided to bring in Nakamura, Zuraski, and Boruc initially on loan, and then that was a permanent deal. You can't argue with that. When you look at those three players, Zuraski was the top goal scorer, joint with John Hartson that season. And what they provided Celtic with, the three players against Bellamy, as fantastic a signing as Bellamy would have been, was the right choice. But that's the way that Gordon Strachan did business.
The only one of the old guard that worked for Strachan was Hartson. And even then, he was jettisoned. And Lenny, aye. I can understand why Tomo says on Friday night he doesn't get on with Strachan, I think. But a lot of that with Bobo, Sutton, Thompson, sort of do with money by this point, eh? And Peter's gone like that. Peter's been in the job 2 years at this point. Peter Law's been in the job 2 years at this point. He's gone, we need to get this wage bill done, and they guys are not going to contribute to your team, and you need to get them off. Be hook or be crook. And I think that's what ended up happening there. I mean, you're talking about, we also got Nakamura, we also got this wee guy.
Yeah, we did.
As well, with the Bellamy money. So I remember the first time I heard we were interested in signing Shinzuki Nakamura. It was the day of my wedding, and I was drinking a Koppenberg, and it was on. Somebody says, "Oh, Celtic are interested in signing this Japanese guy from Perugia," and it turned out to be this wee genius.
By the way, Robert, thanks for that, because I didn't realise it was an abbreviation of Sorry?
It's an abbreviation of that.
Proletariat, yeah.
Proletariat.
And I didn't realise that. So thanks. This is an education tonight, Axom. Screamacelica, Kev. We get educated in politics, in literature, in music, And anything else that you care to mention, throw it in. Paddy tells us that young Francis Turley from Ardoyne was in the winning Celtic youth team last night that won 6-5 against Rangers in a thrilling encounter. Thanks, Paddy. That's brilliant, mate. Absolutely delighted for you and all the boys from Ardoyne as well.
See, when you're talking about that season there, I think it benefited us getting popped out of Europe. I really think it did benefit us getting popped out of Europe, and it allowed Strachan to build a team round about like Zarafsky, Nakamura, Paul Telfer. Paul Telfer was fantastic. I didn't care what anybody says. Telfer helped Nakamura settle into that Celtic team because Telfer was just reliable. He was always there for Nakamura, and it's one of my favourite nights winning the league because you've had such a bad time for part the week before, and Big Hartson scoring that goal like for 25 yards against Hearts on a midweek night to win us the league quite early doors.
That was on his birthday, wasn't it?
Aye, I think it was like that was great, absolutely brilliant. And Stratton gave us some good times, and this is where I remember this album, Paul, more than what I remember it for 2005. I remember it more in the running in 2008 because of the next song that we're going to talk about is Keep the Dream Alive.
Mm-hmm.
I had this CD in the car. Now, I'm thinking I didn't really listen to this Oasis album at the time as much as I would have done because of everything that was going on in my life. It just wasn't there. But I remember putting on this album the Monday after we got beat off Motherwell at Celtic Park on my way to work. And this song, Keep the Dream Alive, and the fact it was called Don't Believe the Truth. And it's the Barry Robson and Paul Hartley 8-game run that won us the league title. And this was my soundtrack to that 8-game run.
Brilliant.
I listened to this album constantly for that 3-4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I remember it for. I can't remember it for 2005, but I remember it for that running.
Yeah. No, it's incredible how a particular song or album can transport you to a time in your life, Kev. Keep the Dream Alive. I think that follows what you said earlier on about Andy Bell's contributions to Oasis albums being almost flawless. I think a sneak peek should never have made it anywhere near an album. No. But then also the chorus of that song is phenomenal. Keep the Dream Alive. Superb, off the scale. Celtic, there were ups and downs in that season. Bratislava has been mentioned by you already. No one will forget Clyde and getting beat 2-1 by Clyde away from home. And they had 2 goals chopped off, Kev, for offside. Unbelievable. And they missed a penalty.
Aye, they did miss a penalty as well, aye. Did we sign Roy Keane that season?
That was his debut. That was his debut. Yeah.
So that would have been the last time I was at Ibrox. Zarafsky scored and we won 1-0, and Lenny and Roy Keane completely bossed the middle of the park.
Aye, Roy Keane was outstanding that day. Is there a reason you never went back? Is it one of your?
They chucked the ticket prices up about a tenner for the previous season, and I says I wasn't getting involved in that Old Firm pantomime. And I've never been back at Ibrox since.
And you'll probably never be back now, even if you wanted to. Obviously, we beat Dunfermline in the League Cup final, having been knocked out of the Scottish Cup. We overcame them 3-0. It was something of a kind of easier task than some of the other previous games against Dunfermline had been.
Dion Dublin, who's the complete opposite from David Ginola. Allegedly.
I don't know who you've been talking to. Dion Dublin incredibly broke his neck on the field of play, eventually came and played for Celtic in this cup final, scored a goal, and then ended up on the telly with one of the home improvement shows or something like that.
Still on it, is he no? He still does it. And he's got the dub. He made a musical instrument. The dub.
The dub?
Yes. Do you not care about the dub?
I've never heard of the dub, mate. That type of dub. Jimmy Johnston, obviously, was remembered on the day where all Celtic players wore the number 7, you will remember. And the goals came for Celtic by Zuraski, who I thought was a great re-signing, Sean Maloney and Dion Dublin. And I always remember that particular team, there were some players in it who were unspectacular. You've already mentioned Paul Telford, but they've done a very specific job for Gordon Strachan. And at this point, Bobo Baldi was still in the mix. He was still in favour. I'm going to ask you a question without looking at the starting lineup for Dunfermline. Which ex-Celt started for Dunfermline in the League Cup final against Celtic that day?
Ex-Celt?
Yeah. Do you know who was in goals for the Pars?
Derek Stilley?
Oh, the Tory councillor. No, it was Alan McGregor.
Was it?
Alan McGregor was in goals for Dunfermline, and whilst he lived in Dunfermline, he lived in this Mass Street in the house on the corner. He rented that house. Alan McGregor. But which Celt, ex-Celt, came on, actually started for Dunfermline? Striker, wee guy, scored a quick hat-trick in Europe.
Birchall. I was going to say Birchall.
Matt Birchall. Yeah,
I was going to say Birchall. I thought it was Birchall, but it was like, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me there that Birchall played for Dunfermline. I'm going,
remember, he just turned into a journeyman, didn't he?
Aye.
He turned into a journeyman, played with a lot of clubs. Great wee player in his earlier days. The song after Keep the Dream Alive is a Game Archer song called A Bell Will Ring. And I think that if Liam's vocals weren't on this song, it's a song that would probably sink without trace. But Liam elevates it, Kev. I'm wondering, is this another track? I've lost count of how many tracks you've dropped already.
I've only dropped 3 so far, and this is my 4th.
Right, okay.
And I agree with you. This was quite easy to drop, and I replace it with Sitting Here in Silence, which was a B-side to, I can't remember what was the B-side to, but I replaced it with that because I think Sitting Here in Silence, and it doesn't sound finished, but I reckon that if they put it on the album, they would have finished it, and it would have segued beautifully into Let There Be Love. I think that would have worked. Or you could have swapped them round, actually, and ended the album with Sitting Here in Silence.
Well, I've already said I don't think that Let There Be Love is the perfect closer on this LP. I'm keeping A Bell Will Ring in there, but it would be interesting to hear the Death in Vegas version, because I'm pretty sure it'll be a more psychedelic, expansive version of the song. Let There Be... Anyway, anybody in the comment section know if the Death in Vegas sessions have ever surfaced online? I'd love to hear them. Let There Be Love. It's a single. It's a Noel song. You've got the Liam and Noel duel, as we've heard on so many songs before. What was the one on the Stop Crying Your Heart Out? It's a kind of same idea as that. It's a love song. It's Noel and Liam, that brotherly love. I do think it's great. I just don't think it's a single. And I don't think it's an album closer. I would have had it earlier on in the LP. I would have replaced it, though, with another song as a single, Kev. Mucky Fingers. I'd have had Mucky Fingers as that single.
I agree with you there. It's just like part 2 of Stop Crying Your Heart Out, the same sort of format, the exact same sentiment, the fact that you've got Noel and Liam duetting on it. It's like this worked the last time, we will do it again, and we need to actually put this out as a single because that's what people expect me to do. And I think it was like Gary Barlow can write a tune, but everybody kens what sort of tune Gary Barlow can write. Noel Gallagher can write these in his sleep. And it's just like, I need to put one of them out because that's what folk are expecting me to do.
And by the way, it was the single that had the B-side Sitting Here in Silence on My Own that you're obviously going to put in as the closing track on the album, Kev. I normally ask for B-sides, but we've spoken about them during the show. I think this is up there. Definitely in the top 4, possibly in the top 3 Oasis albums. And I'm going to ask you for the Screamacelica jukebox. I'm giving you a nugget, and I'm going to ask you for 3 songs.
The 3 songs are Turn Up the Sun, Mucky Fingers, and Keep the Dream Alive.
Right, I'm going for Mucky Fingers, which I would also have released as a single. I don't know if I dreamt that because I was working some long hours and maybe I just imagined it one day. The Importance of Being Idle, Absolutely love that tune. And what was that Andy Bell one? Keep the Dream Alive.
Keep the Dream Alive, aye.
Great track. Great track. That had also been a better single, I think, as well.
Definitely, aye.
Celtic went on to win the double, Kev. Our European exploits were to improve under Gordon Strachan. Are we more appreciative of what Strack gave us now that we can look back on it than perhaps we were at the time?
I would like to think we are, but I do remember that his last season was utterly horrendous. And if that still clouds my... He should have left that night in Tannadice. That night when we had the comeback there, for an 18-month period where we had Sean Maloney was untouchable, Venegura Hesselink was untouchable as well. We played some decent enough football, but by the time we got to that fourth season and we're signing guys like Willow Flood and that, it's just getting stale and stale. And the second last game of that season at Easter Road, where we didn't try to attack to about the 78th minute, when it was nothing each, where a victory would have put us into pole position going into the final. He was too cautious that day, I think. And this was a point where we were using the fact that Lee Naylor could throw the ball for a throw-in quite far in as an absolute tactic. We actually started using that as a tactic at that point. I just think it got stale at that point, and I think a lot of folk remember that. But for me, the first 3 seasons, they were great. Done well in Europe. You had Nakamura, we had Maloney, we had Vinegura Hesselink, you had Paul Hartley, you had Barry Robson dragging that league title. I enjoyed the Stratton years. I did. But the last year was... He should have went. I think when Samara scored to win 1-0 at Ibrox in his 4th season, and I'm sure he'll admit it yourself, he says to Dermot Desmond, I'm gone. He wanted to leave after that game, and Desmond talked him out of it.
Right. I mean, that night, obviously, at Tannadice, very emotional. And yes, with hindsight, that's fine. It's like saying split up after Nebworth to Oasis. At the time, you know, they still think they can rule the world. They can go and get more success after that. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. And of course, we're signing Willow Flood when we should have signed Stephen Fletcher that January as well, Kev. So let's not forget that. Right. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. We are covering every Oasis album. And we are going to be covering the final, the 7th LP next week, hopefully, if we can get it in both our diaries. And then we're going to be covering the 2 live albums and the 2 greatest hits albums as well. And that'll give you the full discography leading up to our big Oasis night, which is at Barra's Art and Design at the end of the month. If you want to buy tickets, the ticket link is underneath this video. Thanks everybody for getting involved. We really do appreciate it. Give us a thumbs up if you're watching this on YouTube. And obviously for me to say, Kevin Graham, thanks again for joining me on Screamacelica.
Cheers, lads. Speak to you later.